All right. Well, what do you got for us for the Gilligan's Island? I have a sense where Joe's going. I'm interested to see what you're doing with it.
I made my Gilligan's Island a horror movie.
Yes.
Ooh, I like it.
This would be a fun battle.
So
I
for my director, I have John Krasinski, obviously hot off of Quiet Place 2, and he's said he doesn't necessarily want to come back to do Quiet Place 3, but he likes the horror genre and he'd like to work within that again. So I'm giving him a chance to do that here. Uh, so my premise here is that when a cruise ship of various strangers crashes on a deserted island, a ragtag group of survivors must struggle to work together to survive. However, on the first night on the island, a mutilated dead body is found, and they realize there's a killer among them. And essentially, a slasher movie with the characters of Gilligan's Island, and you get like this slowly decaying of their relationships where they don't know who to trust, and you as the audience don't know who the killer is. You're seeing slasher scenes like Friday the 13th type scenes, but you don't know who the killer is. They're masked. So you have to kind of uncover the dynamics of these relationships and kind of solve the mystery as you're watching along with the characters. And my idea is that they send out a message to to the Air Force or whatever they need to do the rescue, the Coast Guard, I guess you could call, and they say, "Oh, we'll be there in like 72 hours." So they got to survive 3 nights on this island with a killer among them, and you get kind of like that counting clock tension in this movie. And I'll go through my cast right here. I got Gilligan. He's kind of underestimated fool character who is our lead, and ultimately kind of grows from being the foolish outsider to the one they all kind of rely on by the end. And I have them played by Lakeith Stanfield. The character Lovey Howell, the rich kind of socialite who's the older woman who has suitcases and suitcases full of clothes despite being like a couple of days long of a cruise, is played by Jessica Lange. I think she could pull off that like snobby rich woman pretty well. Thurston Howell, rich and cruelly bold Hollywood producer. He's like the the richest of the rich among them. I have him played by Stellan Skarsgård, and he's the one who gets killed opening night. So he has a small role in the movie, and then opening night he's killed. And I'll get into it in a second here. But like throughout the first day, you see like all of these characters have reasons that they would want to kill this rich asshole, because of course Gilligan's getting bullied by him because he's like the outcast. He's not really like the rest of them, and he's making tons of moves on the attractive women of the camp. So he's a target for everyone the first night. And Ginger, as a character from the original, of course, she's a hot young model who gets tons of attention from the survivors. She's kind of like the really hot girl among the cast, and I have her played by Anna Taylor-Joy in this. And Marianne, she's also a woman in the cast, but she's kind of the one who's often overlooked in favor of Ginger. And I have her played by Olivia Cook. She can play that kind of like slight outcast like she does in Bates Motel or something like that, or even Me-Year-Old and Dying Girl. Yeah. And I have the professor, the scientist. I have him as like a science teacher in a college who is the moral center of the group, played by John Krasinski himself, the writer of the director and writer of the movie. He cast himself in Quiet Place, so I think putting him in this supporting role here would be a good fit. And then I had the skipper. He's kind of the short-tempered ship captain. He didn't want to get into all the situation. Now he's dealing with all these ridiculous passengers on this island that he was not ready for this, and he's played by John Goodman. I think he played that pretty well. And you get this dynamic where, of course, the first night Thurston is killed, and everyone kind of is suspicious of each other. They're saying, "Oh, you know, Ginger, you were harassed by him last night. Of course, it was you." And "Oh, Marianne, you're just jealous that I got his attention. You didn't, so it must have been you." And "Oh, the skipper, you have such a short temper. It was probably you." And they immediately start turning on each other, and you get this. And then the second night gets even harder because the killer is out there taking them down. They're running through the forest. They're all kind of separated. You get that tension there the second night, and then the killer comes and takes out Marianne. Olivia Cook's character dies the second night, and so does Jessica Lange's character. So we got two deaths the second night, and now of course our survivors left are Gilligan, Ginger, the professor, and the skipper. So we're way down in the cast here. So the third night, now they're all turned against each other. Oh god, there's more deaths. What are we gonna do? And they all separate. They kind of have their own little clans of each other that they're faithful to. And the third night, it goes all off. You know, they're like, okay, in the morning, this Coast Guard's gonna get here. All we gotta do is make it through literally the night. But of course, as a horror movie does, it goes off the last night, and we get the reveal here that the killer was Ginger, the hot young model who gets all the attention. Anna Taylor-Joy's character, she is the killer the whole time. And they were kind of right about Stellan Skarsgård, like he was harassing her, but she was like, "Oh, I didn't care about the harassment. I just killed him because he didn't cast me in a movie that he was casting, and there's this kind of backstory of like I think that's part of a horror movie. All these characters that you think are disconnected have these connections, and you start to uncover that like throughout their lives they all had these chance encounters with each other, and that kind of brings characters together. And then in the last scene, they Gilligan and Lovey escape. The professor is killed in the last scene. The skipper kind of leads them out, and he's kind of the one who gets them off the island. And then they're kind of floating out on this like makeshift raft that the professor built, and on the floating out in the ocean, they get rescued by the Coast Guard, and you get this kind of cliffhanger ending of you get a reveal here that Lovey Howell herself was kind of involved in the killing too. So just even though Anna Taylor-Joy was caught and left on the island, maybe the second killer also got away. So you have a bit of a horror movie twist at the end where the killer gets away and can come back for the sequel. And that's my pitch for Gilligan's Island as a horror movie, a slasher. You get these iconic characters from the island who are just kind of taken out one by one and turning against each other. And I think John Krasinski can pull it off really well. It's different from A Quiet Place, but it's still in the horror genre, so I'd be into it. That's my pitch.
All right, kind of an interesting new horror take for John Krasinski. I'm into it. Joe, what do you got for your, I'm guessing, horror movie, Gilligan's Island?
All right, so I went in a slightly different direction, and when Tristan started to say who his director was, I thought he was going to say my director, and I thought we were going to go in a very similar direction, which was always a pain to fight against. But instead of John Krasinski, my director is Jordan Peele. For the role of Gilligan, I have Lucas Hedges. For the skipper, I have Russell Crowe. For Thurston Howell III, the millionaire of Jason Isaacs and his wife, Mrs. Howell will be played by Laura Dern. For the role of Ginger, I have Emma Watson. And then for the professor, I have Jeffrey Wright, who is in the recent Bond movies, and he's also going to be Commissioner Gordon in the next Batman movie. For the role of Marianne, I have Laura Harrier, who is in Spider-Man Homecoming and Black Klansman. So my movie is set in 1964, which is when the show premiered. And the three leads of my movie are mainly Gilligan, the professor, and Marianne, with the skipper, the billionaires, and Ginger, all kind of representing various people in power. So after a big storm, they get marooned on an island during a tour. The professor, a botanist at Howard, tries telling the group what plants are edible and which aren't. However, he's kind of ignored by pretty much everyone in the group except for Marianne and Gilligan. The rest eat poisonous plants and finally only listen to him when on their deathbeds when he offers them an antidote. Afterward, as time passes and resources on the island get scarce, the group starts to turn on each other. Those who are used to having power turn against Marianne, Gilligan, and the professor. So we have the skipper, who is, starts to get very violent and aggressive, especially towards the professor and Marianne. The millionaire shun Marianne and the professor from the camp, not wanting to be around them, which will create kind of a level of mystery as Marianne and the professor aren't really sure what's going on at the main camp. Ginger tries to befriend Marianne and acts kind to her, but when push comes to shove, she sides with the skipper and the millionaires. The horror comes a lot from the jump scares of the skipper kind of running out and chasing the main leads that they have to eventually fight, and not knowing who they can trust as the members of the tour show their true colors throughout the movie. When our three leads finally defeat the others and at the end and it looks like help is coming, Gilligan admits that he sabotaged the boat on purpose because he had been drafted to the Vietnam War and he knew whatever happened to him on the boat was better than what would happen in Vietnam. So he kind of wanted to represent like that ally that you thought was with you for the entire time, but he turns out he's kind of the reason for your demise. And then the ending of the movie is they see a ship off on the horizon, but they don't really know if it's here for rescue, if it even sees them, or if it's even looking for them. And that's my pitch.
Joe, I got all your casting except who was your Gilligan?
Lucas Hedges.
Lucas Hedges. Got it. Okay, that's what I missed. All right. Bob, you have any questions for them? You're the one making the final decision on this.
I mean, nothing specific other than I just want both of you in your fights to kind of justify the type of horror movie you chose. Like, why did this fit for you for Gilligan's Island? Not really something that I need, like, a specific answer right now, but just kind of address it whenever you do get to your fight.
Yeah, I'd say my I think both of you went a little different directions with the horror that we've seen both these directors do. I think these are two of the top 5 horror directors working today. Um, but my main question, I guess, is for Joe of what we've seen in Get Out and what we've seen in Us is a lot of racial and societal commentary on those movies. And I know yours obviously is kind of doing that with the Vietnam thing, but it seems like a kind of a different take of what Jordan Peele's shown us. So what in your movie kind of is making me feel like it's a Jordan Peele movie and not just like any old horror movie?
So one of the things with casting, a black actress for Marianne and a black actor for the professor, one of the things I wanted to do is like, even though the professor has this job where he should be respected, you have most of the other crew is not respecting him, and same with Marianne, that she's kind of ignored, and it's kind of one of the things is like to show how like basically the million, everyone's marooned on this island together. Everyone's essentially equal, but the millionaires, because they have all this money, which ultimately doesn't matter, they view themselves as better than everyone else on the group. And Ginger, who's used to being like popular and famous because she's a movie star, again views herself as like better than other people in the group, even though like there's 5 of us here, no one here is more famous than anyone else. And same with the skipper, he's used to being in charge, but it's like you've never been marooned on an island. And then here's the professor, who actually has knowledge about the situation because he's a botanist, and because he's like black and it's 1964, they just kind of ignore him. They're just like, oh, what you're saying is not, we don't care about what you have to say.
Okay, that answers that for me, and I don't have any other questions, so we'll start the fight. Tristan did his pitch first, so he'll get the first minute to defend why his movie is better than Joe's.
Before I forget, I want to address Bobby's question really quick, and like, why did I make it a slasher? And I think it's the premise fits perfectly. Like, it's a contained location, a really short cast list. It's a perfect slasher premise. Like, they're all stuck on typical slasher, like, oh, a cabin in the woods, and this is like, oh, an island in the ocean. So you get the people that can't leave, they can't escape, but it's a short cast list, perfect for a horror slasher. And I'd like to see John Krasinski get out of the sort of like monster thriller genre of horror and get into and try a different subgenre of horror here. I don't like Lucas Hedges' cast in Joe's. I think he's
30 seconds.
an okay actor, but I don't see him as Gilligan. Gilligan's like the buffoon kind of goofy character, and I don't see Lucas Hedges playing that. And I'm also not a fan of your ending. It's just like, oh, they see a boat and maybe it helps them, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. And I think mine has a more definitive ending with a bit of a cliffhanger for a
15.
horror movie, but you still get the ending of the movie. Like, it's still over. You get the answer to the question, they escape, and yours doesn't answer any of the questions. It feels like I'd finish that movie and I'd be like, well, okay, I guess it's over. And mine just has an actual ending. So I'll get more into my defense on my 2 minutes, but I'll hand it off to Joe now, see what he has to say for his 1 minute.
Okay.
Joe?
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, I think I partially kind of answered your question with answering Johnny's question, but one other thing too is, horror movies always, like Cabin in the Woods played with it a lot too, of like horror movies have these like classical archetypes, and I feel like Gilligan's Island does as well. Just by watching the theme song, they're not even like, this is Steve. They basically are like, this is the skipper, this is the millionaire, this is the movie star. Like, they have these classical archetypes, so that's why I kind of went towards the horror with this. And I feel like with how I answered Johnny's
30
question,
seconds.
I kind of answered why I went with what I went with. As far as my ending, I feel like I partially tried to tie it into the show, as like they were constantly marooned on this island, but they would still have like visitors come to the island. So I kind of wanted to tie into that a little bit of like the ship's coming, but you're kind of, it's never like they land on shore and rescue them. So you're still partially wondering if the ship's truly coming for them. So, it's kind of like the choose your own adventure type of ending. Like, do you think it came for them, or do you think they're left marooned on the island like in the show?
Okay. All right, Tristan, 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, so for my 2 minutes, I'm going to tack on your Jordan Peele choice a little bit. You kind of defend the social commentary a little bit, but you didn't defend the racial side of it. And I think Jordan Peele, one of the things he seems to pride himself on a lot is forwarding black voices and forwarding black stars. And you have 2 black actors in your movie, sure, but almost all of your cast is white people. And I think Jordan Peele shines when he's able to take black actors you didn't necessarily know before, like the lead of Get Out, and suddenly he's a household name. Suddenly he's a Oscar nominee. Suddenly he's leading franchises, and I think Jordan Peele could have been a good pick if you had like a prominently black cast instead of like two black actors in your movie. So I think that kind of misses the premise of a Jordan Peele movie. I also think that John Krasinski's a better choice because I think he showed in Quiet Place 2. He worked with that deaf actress. He's a character that typically in a movie would be like dismissed and someone they wouldn't take seriously. And I think that's something similar to Gilligan's Island. Like you have these characters
1 minute.
you wouldn't necessarily take seriously. Like Gilligan's a fool, but he's key in figuring out who the killer is. People underestimate him and say stuff they wouldn't say around him because they think, oh, it's just Gilligan. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's the one who puts it all together and figures out the killer at the end. So I think that's very faithful to John Krasinski's style as a director. Underestimated characters that kind of come through at the end and become the leads. And I think mine just sounds like a great direction for John Krasinski's career. And I think yours feels like a bit of a step back for Peele. I think I'd like to see him do more creative, interesting stuff
30
and
seconds.
stuff that forwards black artists and not a bunch of white people and then like two black people in the cast and that's it. I think mine just fits the director a bit more and is a better direction for his career. I don't think Jordan Peele doing a Gilligan's Island movie with a bunch of white people is what I want to see. So that's my argument for mine. I'll surrender the rest of my time over to Joe.
All right.
Who sucks?
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, I was like, there you go. All right, Joe, whenever you're ready.
As far as the Jordan Peele defense, the one thing I would add is I feel like for my movie to work, you kind of need the white people to outnumber the black people, because if it's like 5, black people and 1 white people, I feel like the dynamic in the movie doesn't necessarily work. And as far as unknown actress, I feel like Laura Harrier and her, in the movies I've seen her in, has proved that she is a good actress and could lead a movie, but she's mostly played small roles, and I feel like she could be kind of like what Lakeith Stanfield was in Get Out, or what a number of the actors were in Us. I feel like she could be that for this movie. As far as like John Krasinski, I just don't know if like a slasher movie that's a take on Gilligan's Island is like going to be a step forward for any director. I feel like it's kind of, a standard type thing. I'm not going to say like, oh, this Gilligan's Island movie is going to push Jordan Peele's movie forward, but I don't know if there's a director out there that directing a remake of Gilligan's Island is going to push their career forward.
1 minute.
So I wasn't exactly focused on that aspect. And I just don't know if like a John Krasinski take on Gilligan. Oh, and one thing I did want to add was as far as Gilligan being the buffoon, I kind of didn't exactly want to go in that direction because I feel like it didn't fully go along with my tone and my story, but I did want to have him kind of be a buffoon in the end where you realize he was the one that sabotaged the boat and put him in that situation. So I feel like there is that aspect of Gilligan of being the buffoon there, and I will concede the rest of my 22 seconds or whatever it is. Also, Tristan sucks.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm making the final call, Johnny. So I think I know where I'm going, but I could actually be like kind of persuaded one way or the other here. So what do you got?
It's tough because I feel like since both are horror movies, both are by very good directors, so I trust them with this project. A lot of the kind of deciding factor for me, I felt like would come down to cast. Unfortunately, Anton Yelchin was tragically killed years ago, because I feel like he would have been a really, really good Gilligan in a horror take on Gilligan's Island. That's like who I kept picturing in a role. I would have really loved like a rom-com type of Gilligan's Island directed by Wes Anderson. I think that could have been a good direction, but both of you went horror. And I think what it comes down to for me is what's like the next step for these directors, because I like both casts. I don't necessarily love Lucas Hedges as the lead as far as what I know of Gilligan, but Joe did a good job arguing why he chose him and how it's a different character. So that kind of, canceled that out for me. So I think just as far as like next step for a director's career goes, I think Tristan made a good point that this would be a step back for Jordan Peele. And I think that this would be a fun step forward for John Krasinski to go more of a slasher movie. rather than what we saw in A Quiet Place and Quiet Place 2. So just as far as what I'm looking for with these directors, I think I'd rather see slasher movie by John Krasinski than Jordan Peele just kind of doing a movie that seems like a watered down version of what we've seen from him. So I would go personally with Tristan's, but it is very close.
Yeah, this one was very close. And I do think that for a few different reasons, I'm going in the same direction. I think that the type of cast, like the style of show and the cast that you have for Gilligan's Island does play itself very well, I think, to a slasher. That fit really well in my head, like when I was picturing a movie of like, you're going to kill off these very stereotypical kind of characters as you go throughout the movie. I think that just kind of fit. And again, yeah, I think that Jordan Peele directing Gilligan's Island, just it didn't quite work quite as well in my head as far as what I'd like to see him do and what I think he could do as a director for that type of movie. So I think I'm going Tristan as well. And we're going to tie it up at 2.
Well, there we go.
All right.